So, as most of you are probably aware, there was a teenage boy. There's conflicting accounts around his age. One media outlet said 20, another said 17, while another said 16 years of age. Either way, the young man, stabbed an army barracks chaplain in Galway, right? So the Irish Independent has a headline saying that young man who stabbed the chaplain was radicalized online by ISIS, not the Egyptian deity, but followers of a specific religious creed, right? We all know, right? So the sad thing about that is not so much that someone was stabbed, because that speaks for itself, okay? The sad thing about that is that this story and that man's experience of being probably nearly killed, probably felt like he was going to be killed, will now be used to frame an argument as to why government should be able to step in and screen, censor, fine private companies for the content that's shared online. So the headline, young fella was radicalized online by ISIS. It begs a few questions, okay? And one of the questions is, well, what do you mean by radicalized? What is it to be radicalized? It is to adopt a perspective on the world to such an extreme degree that any divergent thoughts or any conflicting or contentious thoughts or beliefs against the one you have adopted needs to be taken out of the conversation and needs to be done away with. So you're a radical, okay? You operate from the root. The belief that you adopt is now the root, and the root motivation for all of your actions is the belief that you're after adopting, and you leave no room for others, and you even tend to see others as total enemies of your worldview, okay? So that's what being radicalized means. So the next question that leads to then is, well, if he was radicalized, what set of beliefs was he after adopting that would allow him to believe that going in and attacking an Irish army barracks was a justifiable thing to do? But we're not allowed to talk about those set of beliefs. And the way this government, the Irish government I'm speaking of now, the way this Irish government is trying to push things and trying to coerce people's sentiments and interest is in hate speech, which means there are certain categories of beliefs, certain categories of people, and certain categories of ideological persuasions that you're not allowed to criticize or critique. You're not allowed to say, I don't agree with this certain belief, here is why, because if you do so, that will be deemed as hate speech, and if you've been following what's going on in England, you will likely land yourself in jail now for having your own belief system, for having a different set of beliefs that are contrary to those that are being pushed heavily and we'll say softly encouraged. You can argue hardly, but it's softly encouraged by this government, by 99% of the media outlets around this country, and all of the, not all, but the majority of these NGOs and stuff, right? So if we were to live in a country and a time that valued sincerity, that valued truth, and that valued critical thinking, the conversation would spill into or open up to a field of what was the belief system that this young fella had been radicalized into. It's nearly self-explanatory because it's from ISIS. It's a religious belief, okay? It's a totalitarian regime or a totalitarian system of colonizing a country, colonizing a people, and exerting dominance over that people under the veil of religion, okay? So we should be able to absolutely, as adults, openly and unashamedly and with no fear of repercussions, be able to speak about what these belief systems are, whatever the situation is. And we can use this one as an example, but that should be able to be spread across all belief systems, religious or not, okay? Because they're ideas, they're thoughts that can lead to actions, and they can lead to people dying, okay? So we should be able to sit down and hash these things out and pick them apart and say, well, this is something that we don't want here. Of course you should, but you're kneecapped, like, so your livelihood will be under threat, your home address, your family will be put at risk by people that want to shut you up and silence you from having them conversations. They will release your personal information all over the internet for harmless reasons, right, or just for investigative purposes, blah blah. But you're not allowed to have those conversations, and what the Irish government is trying to do is follow in the steps of the Trotskyite, totalitarian English Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and whatever, all the rest of them over there as well, that are allowing what's going on to continue, you know, and under the veil of, well, we're acting in accord with the law. Sure, but there's a difference in the severity of sentences that are being handed out to people, and you can see that in Ireland already. There's specific judges in this country that are handing out disgraceful sentences to people that are doing the absolute worst things imaginable to children. So they're after abusing children, and now they're getting suspended sentences. So we already have, the precedent is already set for a two-tier justice system in Ireland, and you're going to start seeing more of that. So to come back to where we started, this incident is now going to be used to push through legislation that will allow this government to attack and ultimately try and destroy private companies from operating in ways that this government doesn't like, okay? And it will also attempt to push through hate speech from the reactions that people have to this, which are normal reactions. So people will look and say, well, what belief system that he adopted allowed him to think that he could go in and butcher someone, and that was a justifiable thing to do? Let's have a look at them, at that belief system, and people will respond to that and say, well, look, here's the book, blah blah blah, it says this XYZ, this is what has led to that. Adopting these beliefs will lead to these actions. Not allowed to say that. The government will then use your response to this as natural and as legitimate as it is to force through these hate speech laws. We are not operating in a country or in a society that values honesty and truth anymore. And you may throw the argument that it has never been that way. Fair enough. But do we not want to aim at that? Where we can sit down and speak of things honestly without the fear of being put in jail for having different views and different values and different ideas and different opinions. Don't let that happen. Don't let that happen. I'm not going to let that happen to me, and I hope that you don't let that happen to you. And if we all took care of that and valued truth over government spin, and truth over what's safe to say, and truth over social shaming, we would be doing a hell of a lot better in this country and in this world. And people would actually want to stay here that are born here. But we don't. We look like we're going to follow England. And the government will say, the media will paint nationalists or people that want Ireland to remain in Ireland that they like and that they grew up in as following English stuff and following Tommy Robinson and all that stuff. It's the Irish government, it's the Commissioner of the Gardaí in Ireland that are following, if not imposing directly, English values that are the dominant force there now, or that are being seen to represent England because of who the Prime Minister is and the hands that are guiding him behind the curtain, right? So again, projection. This government will call you and dictate and tell you and accuse you of doing the very things that they're doing, right? So watch the spin. This horrible thing that happened because of a stupid set of beliefs and a warped ideology that has no business on this land will now be spun into shutting you up